Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode. My name is Charles, and I'm your host today. My guest is Shawn Jordison. Now, he is a digital accessibility expert and the founder of Shawn Jordison Consulting, better known as the Accessibility Guy. Shawn specializes in helping organizations navigate the complex world of accessibility standards, ensuring their content is usable, truly usable, by people with disabilities. Shawn is also a popular content creator on YouTube, where he's known for his no-nonsense approach to demystifying accessibility. So whether it's training teams or providing practical guidance, his focus is always on helping people understand what it takes to build a more inclusive digital world. Shawn, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. I'm excited to be here and talk about this very sensitive topic in today's world. So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Me too, because I know we've had discussions like this before, but I feel like that was before AI. And it wasn't even that long ago that we were talking about accessibility. So today's really going to be about like reimagining accessibility and how AI is just completely shattering the barriers to equity. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got a question here. So you've made I think over 100,000 accessibility. I'm going to mess up that word every time I say it, aren't I?
You could say like accessible or
Accessible. That's the word I was
yeah.
trying to say. Anytime I try to add more syllables to it, I'll mess it up.
Whenever I read it, I actually do the same problem. Like I mess up on that word specifically sometimes because it's like accessibly. Sorry, go ahead.
I just find it funny the very word trying to be more accessible is the word that I keep messing up because it's not a very accessible word.
Right.
So well, anyway, you've made over 100,000 documents that are accessible, and I want to know how AI has sort of changed your approach to this previously very labor-intensive task.
Yeah, it's interesting. That number, I've actually been using that number for years. I've never really calculated it. We do a lot of volume here at the Accessibility Guy, and just throughout the years, that's just a number I picked. It's probably several 100,000 documents at this point that we've made accessible. But how AI is assisting today is in a whole new light. And so previously, when we would make a document accessible, uh, in the earlier versions of Adobe Acrobat, back when you had a single license subscription, or to Foxit's point, Foxit's PDF editor, the way that you had to do it was very manual intensive. You had to use a reading order tool to draw a box around some content and make a selection. Using AI today has really streamlined how we can tackle our PDFs. Not only are there more integrated approaches to applying like an API auto tagging solution from within the environment we're working in, but there's tools that exist on the market now that can actually transform that PDF into an accessible HTML file and basically eliminating the need to even have a PDF. And so what we're seeing today is a major disruption to what's been done for years and years and years in the same fashion. And I'm pretty excited to see what that looks like. I don't think it's all the way there yet. Um, I have an interesting philosophy that eventually we are going to remove the need of this dependency on files.
I find it interesting. You'd mentioned that that we're getting there finally from a system that we've been doing the same way over and over again for I'm not even sure how long. I feel like some of these tools they're from the 80s and we're still
100%.
using them. What is going on there? Why is it that accessibility tools they're almost always outdated, they're always inadequate.
My understanding is it comes down to two main categories. How much does something cost and how much time does it take to design? So prior to this AI boom, like when this podcast comes out, everybody knows about AI. It is the hottest topic in tech in the industry right now, hands down. There's not even a second place. Um, Previously, accessibility tools were typically designed to solve a very small problem. For example, we used to use this tool called Text Aloud to create audio files for students with disabilities. And what Text Aloud would allow us to do, we could split a page or a document, let's say a textbook, 1,000-page textbook. We could put in some entries into it to make it come out to 150 words per minute with Paul's voice or Sean's voice, like old TTS synthesizers. Now, that type of tech was typically developed by some guy in his garage because he had a family member or a kid that really depended on that application. And none of the software companies were producing it. And that was because it didn't make money. And so, unfortunately, or historically, what happens is time or money or federal law really influence the tech space. And so now that AI is booming, things cost a lot less money. We're seeing an explosion of change in the accessibility world and in a multitude of other verticals where AI can completely transform all of this manual labor that we would spend hours and hours and hours to do. As an example, that 1,000-page book that is converted into Microsoft Word, we had to use 3 or 4 different software programs to get it from a scanned image to an editable Word document. And then the way that we would split the file so that you wouldn't have a 40-hour MP3 file that you couldn't burn onto a disk. This was before cloud storage. Like, I never thought I'd be like the guy that's like, well, back in my day, we used to burn audio tracks like on discs, not even the DVD gigabyte discs, you know? And so to do 40 hours of content, you would have a stack of discs. Anyways, we would have to go in and manually page break a 1,000-page book because the features weren't there to do it. So just to give you an example, that same manual process, which would take upwards of 20 to 40 hours if you're lucky, can now be solved in 2 or 3 hours using AI, different forms of tech. It just is absolutely streamlined. And that's just kind of one tiny example. But I'm hoping that AI is really going to shed some light on some of these archaic processes and systems. Professional tools like Foxit can integrate them seamlessly so that we can get to accessible files in a snap of a finger.
Now, your comments on CDRs is going to make a lot of our listeners feel very old. I just wanted to warn you about that. Uh, all right. So I honestly think you're right that a lot of the accessibility tools, the reason why they are so archaic is because there's just not a lot of money in it. Right? It doesn't make a lot of money. Your customer base, if you want to call it your customer base, it's not very large. So it's hard to sometimes justify the cost in these massive multi-million-dollar investments into something that's just not going to make that much money. It doesn't seem like a big deal until you are the one who has a disability, and then it's a very big deal.
Or if you're the staff member or in whatever situation who's tasked with doing it. And that's what we're seeing today is, typically someone with a disability is like the very final end product.
Mhm.
And I actually, in my opinion, I don't serve that audience that much anymore. I actually serve now people that are looking to serve that audience. So it's an interesting dilemma. My apologies for interrupting you.
No. You're fine. You're fine. And you're right. And I think as awareness builds, and we're trying to build more and more equity throughout corporate America, as much as we are through our education system, you are having to have these much more difficult conversations. You are having to now have your tech leaders and your bosses and your CEOs and stuff having to answer for, do you have what it
100%.
takes to allow somebody with a disability to work here? And if you don't, why not?
100%. 100%.
Now, the other thing you mentioned was people building applications and such in their garage. And when you're talking about, the 80s and 90s and all that, then you really are talking about these big, massive machines that people are building. And you're going to be able
Yeah,
to get it out to a handful of people, maybe. And you're just hoping that something happens and you're able to get it out to more.
pretty
With
much.
with AI now, I'm seeing people, the people building stuff in their garage are now developing these, video clips that look like they came out of Hollywood, and programs that can suddenly are AI agents and can do these,
Mhm.
incredible, impossible tasks. These are people that are just building it on their own. So, do you think that's going to play a role in this technology as well?
It like kind of gives me goosebumps because access is the key to life, right? Access in the traditional definition of the word. Can I get my content, right? This has been the underpinning of accessibility and the reason why we make textbooks accessible, flyers accessible, closed captioning on videos. Ultimately, what it all boils down to is to provide access. Now, when we look at the accessibility in the other definition, not the one we're talking about, like accessing AI, the free versions of these AI tools I couldn't even compare it to anything. It's like a personal assistant that's right there next to you at all hours for free. And if you have $20 a month, you could pay for one of these tools, the professional version of it. And now your assistant is like the equivalent of a high paid employee that can work for you in a way that you couldn't even believe. To answer your question about how is this going to change the landscape of how this tech is being developed, I mean, we're seeing it now. We are in infancy of AI. Tech tends to shoot straight up usually, right? On a scale of 40 years or a 50 years, AI is the smallest blip that we have right now. Over the course of the next couple of years, we are going to start to see things that are absolutely unbelievable. I mean, we're seeing it now. By the time this podcast comes out, by what we're saying today, there are going to be things we can't even discuss because they haven't come out yet. And I don't know the production timeline. Let's say this comes out in a month. I guarantee you, within 1 month from now to posting, we are going to see stuff that is just mind blowing. I think it's the VO3 from Google that's allowing users to create 5-second videos based on text prompts. I'm
Mhm.
seeing it on TikTok and Instagram. These ridiculous video creations that is AI generated text, AI generated audio, AI generated video. We're going to have trouble differentiating between what's real and not real. And I think this begs the question, do we need a PDF? Do we need a Word document? If I could upload, let's say I'm a student and I'm taking English 100, right, at my local college, it's going to be so different. We can use Google Notebooks LM, right? Google Notebook LM, I think it's called, the
Yep.
learning model for
Oh,
Google.
yeah, yeah.
You
I
can
know
upload
exactly the one.
400 course resources, 50 resources. How many PDFs does that English course have? Let's say we had 16 weeks, a PowerPoint for each one, 20 lectures, and 10 more Google resource links, right? And I'm rounding down. We could upload that all into Google LM, excuse me, into Notebook LM and ask it a question. Like, we have flipped modern education upside down because there's going to be no need to communicate with PDFs. And so an issue that we have in the accessibility world is there are so many different standards, different software, different techniques, and different opinions of how to make a PDF accessible. And now it doesn't work with VoiceOver because VoiceOver doesn't follow traditional accessibility requirements because it's an Apple product, right? They tend to make their own mold. And I'm not talking negatively, it's just the truth. VoiceOver doesn't follow the same traditional tagging methods in terms of a read order that, say, JAWS does or NVDA, which are uh, two of the most popular screen reader applications. So my theory is like, this tech boom in AI, some guy in his garage or his office, or maybe it's a big company, maybe it's Foxit, they're going to create a solution that eliminates the need for document types. It's sort of like everybody's still slinging VCR tapes, and here we are in the digital age now. So I am so excited to see what happens. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but the fact that we're going to be able to chat in an AI tool, I'm gonna be like, all right, Charles, I want a 3 meat pizza delivered to my door. My credit card has already been uploaded. It already has my account information. It already has my address. Why would I need any more effort than a single sentence? What about a button? Order pizza, do my order. It shows up on my doorstep. Like, that's where AI is going to take us, in my opinion. Sorry, that was a
I
really
said
long-winded answer. I don't even know that I
No,
answered
you're
your question.
fine.
I'm sorry.
No, you gave me a lot to think about. Let's say that. All right, I'm going to take us back to PDFs because I believe
Sorry about
that I believe that documents and document workflows and PDFs, I think they're still going to be needed because we are very visual people. And if I'm using AI to culminate data, to pull reports together, whatever it is, I want to be able to see that end output. I no longer have to be the one making it. I now have an AI that's going to make it for me. And how exciting is that? But I do need that final output, or I do need something that I can then move over to somebody else for them to sign. So I need those flows. But when it comes to screen readers and things like that, when we talk about accessibility,
Yes.
I had somebody else explain the difference. And he says, traditionally, it was like programming. You basically had to program your document so that it
Yeah,
would be read a certain way.
100%.
Now it is absolutely like taking your document and handing it to a person and saying, "Would you read this to me?" And that is exactly what it does. So that's where I see the biggest change.
I love that differential. 100%. Yeah, PDFs aren't going anywhere. Documents aren't going anywhere yet. I think, that soapbox that I was on is definitely like a 10-year or even longer. And maybe it won't happen. I agree. Humans in nature, we like what we like. It's going to be a long road till we're independent of documents in that way. But I love that analogy. I 100% agree with that. The traditional sense of making a PDF document accessible is the equivalent of programming. And then what the AI models can do now is like, hey, read this for me. I love that analogy.
I'm always going to be up in the air about the document thing because we always said, well, now that we have
Totally.
Kindles, we're not going to need books anymore. No one's going to read a physical book. You can
Valid.
get it on your Kindle. And
Valid.
obviously, books are everywhere. So
Yeah, there's the argument for print, like hands down. I think what I tend to get at is like someone who is blind or low vision. They're not carrying around textbooks. So in my mind, I think that's the audience I was thinking of, right? But to your
it makes
point,
perfect sense there. You're right.
exactly, and I think that's where I like my lens is focused a lot of in my business that I do because all the work that I do or all the training that I do, I tend to have a couple of specific people with specific disability types, people that I know or have interacted with in my past. People who are blind, low vision, colorblind, or hard of hearing, or traumatic brain injuries who speak who have ESL, so English second language, their first language, maybe Iranian or something like that. And so the thought is that's kind of where I'm looking at AI as an accommodation. But from a purely technical perspective of being able to help the process of making documents accessible, I do think there is a lot of labor that can be removed from a manual process leveraging AI, but I don't know that it's there yet. I have yet to see some tools like I believe the Foxit PDF editor has the ability to auto tag a document as an example, right? It does a great job, but it doesn't solve the problem for me. I still have to go through, manually vet it, ensure it's in the correct reading order, the proper structure. And so I think AI is going to start to leverage that manual labor in a way that we haven't seen. So where a traditional document, let's say it takes 1 hour, I think AI can cut that time down to probably 10 or 15 minutes, leveraging AI and humans to streamline that process.
I don't want to. And I'm not going to try to overstep here because I don't know how it's honestly like in a lot of these different businesses, but it always feels like the number of people that you have devoted to developing apps and developing features and stuff, the largest portion, of course, is going to always be towards your largest audience. They want to be able to develop apps that they know is gonna sell, and then the people who are devoted to accessibility is usually tremendously smaller, and with a
100%.
lot fewer resources. So as we see these changes, and they are happening, just rocket fast, are we seeing the same speed in change when it comes to accessibility, or is it still, even now, kind of lagging behind everything else?
That's a great question. From my perspective, I am seeing more change in the accessibility space than I ever have. In what feels like every time I wake up and I check because I'm in an echo chamber of accessibility, my entire career has been to this space. Like I'm a fairly young guy, but I've been doing this for over 16 years since I was 18 years old. And so what I'm trying to say is occasionally you used to get new information. Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that came through. These days, I can't keep up. I mean, every major player, whether it's Microsoft, Adobe, Foxit, all this software is changing rapidly. And I would say more companies are aware of accessibility than they ever have been before. And it's still a small percentage of it, but it's more than it's ever been. I think companies are introducing universal design a lot more these days. When we're seeing a major product update, I am noticing that accessibility is keeping up, or at least it's thought of. In a lot of situations before, a new product would come out and there would be nothing in it. Like Adobe Illustrator is an example. It's a great product. A lot of people love using it. But I don't know if you knew this, there's zero accessibility in that tool. You cannot export to a tagged PDF. You can't assign headings. There's no styles. And so it's so rudimentary, but that's a product that's living forever. If another product comes along and they create some cool tool to create a PDF, whatever it is, web-based software application, you know, I would be shocked if they didn't consider accessibility in that, just because of the awareness around accessibility has exploded. And I think this correlates with, in the US, we have had a major law update. The Americans with Disabilities Act Title II has had a major update. And internationally, we have other laws like the EAA law set to go in effect of July of 2026. All of these laws are finally pointing to the same location. And that location is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And so we at least now have a common thread. And from my perspective, that common thread is helping accessibility keep up with regular product releases, at least for major corporations. Your small mom and pop shops, of course, are always, it just depends. But I'm seeing tools now dedicated to the accessibility space, whereas before, you almost would never see that.
When you categorize everything that modern science advances, so you talk about like biotech, engineering, software, all these things, they rise usually independently. But AI is a rise in literal intelligence. And as it rises, it literally pulls everything else up along with it. So as AI improves, so does everything else across the board. So that would be
Yeah.
why, as AI advances, look, we're getting these new advancements in accessibility because we're also getting these new advancements in this and in this and in this. It all kind of gets pulled together at the same time. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know how much of that means that we're putting extra focus into it, so much as those who do put focus into it now have better tools to use to develop
That's
better software.
That's definitely a big part of it. In our business of accessibility, like with some clients, we help them apply what's called an accessibility maturity model matrix. It's like this series of steps that organizations can do to improve accessibility from an organizational point of view, as opposed to like, we need to closed caption our videos. It's kind of more comprehensive. And a big shift that we're seeing is corporations putting this into job descriptions, requirements around the knowledge of accessibility. And I think that's a big part as to why we're also seeing both, the industry as a whole rise, but the accessibility rise as well, because it's more integrated. Um, Back in the day, we used to just talk all day about universal design, which meant you design it for everybody from the start. And that term has really changed over the last several years to where it's so much more than that now. But businesses are finally starting to see the benefit of it, and they also don't want community backlash. So it's important that accessibility is baked in, because otherwise you're opening yourself up for litigation, community backlash, whether it's not buying your product or even just like a bad taste in your mouth talking about it, right? Like no company wants to be like, oh, well, we don't want to deal with that company. And so, yeah, accessibility integrated throughout is really, I would agree that it's still behind with the regular tech rise. However, it's still rising way quicker than it ever has been.
I'm curious about a certain myth, and I want you to help me break this, okay? Uh, this was brought up by somebody else, and I think they used, I don't even want to say the company. I'm not going to say the company. All right.
Okay.
So they used another company as an example, and they said, look, this other company, their website's not accessible because they
Hmm.
know the people that go there, that shop there, these are not people with disabilities who would shop there. They You would have people who work with people with disabilities would come shop here and buy tools for their classrooms or for their, whatever it is, but the actual people with the disabilities would not ever shop here. So there was no reason or no real urgency or need to make the site itself accessible. And that felt so backwards from what we'd been told, where if you're going to build a site, you better make sure that it has as much accessibility as possible.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that one.
There's a lot of I've got like bumper sticker statements in my mind, like they're popping up, and one of them is accessibility equals usability, and that's something I use in all my presentations and training. And the thought is like, the more accessible you can make your product, the more usable it is for everyone, because there are a lot of accessibility principles that are more than just applying headings. We're talking about using plain language for those with cognitive disabilities or for ESL learners. Um, Visual white space between content, not overwhelming your users with too much information. You want to have a flow, predictable content, If I go from one page to another page on a website, I want it to be consistent. I want to expect it to follow the similar layout. And all of that really boils down to accessibility principles. It's, the POUR principles from WCAG, and that's POUR. It is my opinion that a company that's doing that doesn't care about their future growth. They might be solving a problem for right now, but I think that if any company is not considering inclusive design today in 2025, like I don't know what they're doing. And it's just going to be a matter of time before they either get sued or they fail. And that's just my personal opinion. And I don't even know what company you're talking about, but even for a giant, what's going to happen is they're going to get litigated, and then they're small, they didn't want to hire a staff person for 100,000 a year, a software developer. They're now going to be sued for $1 million, and it becomes a much bigger problem. Now there's one other like misconception that I love, but I want to address it really quick. And it's
Mhm.
this thought that any monkey could do accessibility. That's the thought. Like you can have a trained monkey make PDFs accessible. That's something I've heard in the industry. And I just don't believe that. Like every
Boy,
time I have a conversation,
that has not been my experience at all.
yeah, interesting. There's definitely two sides of the fence on that comment, but I have heard people say anybody could do it. And and while I believe that truthfully, anybody, any person can make documents accessible, they could integrate accessibility. I also feel like, yeah, anyone could also change the oil in their car. Anyone can also cook breakfast in their house. But this is also, let's be real, this is a service based industry. And so, yeah, if you want to cook every meal for yourself and never go out to eat, that's fine. You can do that. You can make all of your documents accessible. You can make all your websites accessible, but there is a case to be made that working with an expert like the accessibility guy or others out there, people with disabilities who can test your content for if it's failing or not, like there is a benefit to that. There is a benefit to hiring a professional chef to come teach you how to cook. There is a benefit to hiring a mechanic to understand what's actually happening under the hood of your car. You could go try it, you could go fix it. That's fine. But I'm under the house of thought of like, not everybody can do this, and that's okay. That's okay. Hire an expert to do it to help you understand it. And that's just a myth I wanted to address because I work with faculty who have been teaching on grounds for 20 years, and now they're teaching online. They have historical content, thousands of pages of files. They're not going to go spend 20 hours of training, right? Learning how to make their PowerPoints and PDFs accessible, and then go do the application of it and expect nothing in compensation in terms of their actual workplace environment. And so, for any education institutions listening out there, like, yes, your faculty can do this work, but how much is their time worth and how much effort are they going to put into it in terms of training and the actual time to complete the task? I just want to level the playing field. Anybody can do it, but it's okay to hire an expert to help.
I had a chance to work with educators for many years, actually, and I remember when I first introduced a handful of instructors. I introduced them to the what is it called, the accessibility wizard. So it's
Yeah,
the
the Make
tool, and
Accessible Action Wizard. Yep.
well, no, it was the
Oh,
checker. It was the
the
checker
checker.
that I was
Okay,
talking
okay.
about. So we would use the accessibility checker, and it would go through your document and create this checklist of all the places where
Mhm.
your document is not accessible. And it would just be one check mark after another after another. And in some of these documents, it would just create a list. It's this massive list. And all you could do with a list is go, well, here you go fix it.
Yeah. You
And
wanna hear
I
something
mean,
funny about that? Just to
what's
add
that?
on to it?
Mhm.
So, in today's software now, I'll be honest, I don't know 100% sure of Foxit's area on this, but Adobe, Microsoft, and other tools, their built-in accessibility checkers have no bearing on the accessibility standards. So Section 508, WCAG, when we look at making a document PDF UA, universally accessibility compliant,
Yeah.
none of those built-in features align with the standards or law. And so as an expert in the field, I can make any PDF, any document pass those checkers in seconds. But it does not mean they're going to uphold against Section 508, WCAG, or the EAA standards and laws. Like it's just really funny. So I just wanted to address it. So part of my workflow, the accessibility guy workflow that I teach to people in making documents accessible, we always run the accessibility checker at the very end, no matter the platform. Uh, Same goes with Foxit, right? We're going to apply our tags, apply our headings, walk the tags panel, ensure the proper reading order, set our metadata, uh, and then check it with an accessibility checker of the built-in tool. And then we use a third-party tool that actually aligns with the WCAG standard to ensure the validation of that product. So I feel you. There's to circle back to what you mentioned, a laundry list of things to fix, of course, and it's always been a pain in the butt. And I just want to remind listeners, just because it passes that checker, you're almost there, but you need to do a little more due diligence. Please do. Please do a little more just to make sure it's actually compliant.
The other thing I wanted to mention, because we brought this up when we were talking about making websites accessible as well, and you were talking about, everything from just simple cohesion, so that we know what page we're landing on when we click onto the next page, and adding just a little bit of extra white space between blocks so that we're not being overwhelmed. This really changes the definition of what it means to be accessible, right? In documents, for most people, when we talk about making your document accessible, the first thing that they think of is, oh, so for blind people. What?
100%.
Okay, so that's one group,
Yes.
but that is
Yes.
not all groups.
Yes.
So I was just curious, is that something that you typically have to deal with, where you have to more explain, what do you mean by accessibility?
100%. And it's tricky. So when we work with like a federal client, right? The law is pretty clear. If you post a PDF publicly on your website, it has to adhere to XYZ. So that's where the traditional aspect of that question leans to, is like, okay, it has to be accessible. And typically the language is written to support someone who's blind or low vision, because it works. If you make it accessible to that level, in a lot of ways, you're making it accessible to less profound disability. I don't want to compare disability types. That's an unfair thing to do. But if you go for the most intense one in terms of like consuming content, you tend to hit a lot of other ones down the line. However, to your point, the document accessibility is one component. There are multiple others, one of which is visual accessibility. So if you have a bar chart or a graph, or if I were to pull up a PowerPoint right now, right? I want my font size to be a certain size. I want my colors to pass color contrast requirements. I want my data labels to appear. We want to use patterns instead of just solid colors. What about acronyms? If I was in healthcare or even accessibility, I could drown you in acronyms right now, Charles, and it would be unfair. That is, when we're designing for accessibility, or when we're thinking about other disability types, the biggest one we want to look at, in my opinion, next to blindness, low vision, is learning disabilities, cognitive overload. We want to do plain language. In fact, something that people often comment about my content is they love how I break it down, because I don't try to overly complicate it. I'm like, look, you got a document? Here's the 5 things you need to do to make it accessible. Not like, according to the ISO, Matterhorn protocol, we have to, you know, divide by 0 and, multiply by 0. I'm just being silly, but there's so much more to it than just making the document accessible. We've got visual accessibility requirements. We've got learning disability requirements that we want to consider. And then, like, let's think about it. English is not the primary language for a majority of people in the world. Or maybe that's wrong. I actually don't know the stats, but a lot of people don't speak English, right? And if they're learning English, it's a similar thought to someone who has maybe a brain injury or a learning disability, where we need to chunk the content in a meaningful way that's going to help them understand it, not try to overly complicate the system. It's one thing to have an accessible document. It's another for it to be consumable. And there's a fine line and overlap between UX design and accessibility, and they often go hand in hand.
They really do. I was going to say, in the world of marketing, this is really, really valuable, because we understand that the brain will not burn calories if it does not have to.
Yeah.
When you're providing content to somebody, that content really does need to be simple. Simple to the fact
Mhm.
that, I understand exactly what I'm looking at. I think we called it the grunt test. I should be able to look at your
Okay.
content and grunt as
I love
either
that.
an affirmative, I get it, perfect,
Yeah.
move on. I need to be able
I
to
love that.
consume that content as quickly as possible. And if I
Yeah.
can't, it's too complicated.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And I love that litmus test. And that often happens with, like, I remember So to make the document accessible, I have a similar grunt test. Like if you've ever made a biology textbook accessible, like think back, in college days or whatever, complex layouts, 4 columns on a single page or a side story that spans 5 pages in the left-hand column only for some reason. Layouts like that, it's like, why do that? So yeah, a grunt test for me and accessibility is like, oh shoot, this is gonna take me a long time because whoever designed it, like, they're just trying to be mean to me.
Well, with luck, AI is going to change a lot of this, right? It's going to make it just a lot easier to make documents accessible, and it's just going to increase what accessibility means for people and that point of entry.
100%. 100%. I'm very excited about how AI is gonna shift that, with even, like, automatically reflowing content. Like, even just a simple AI thing like that. "Here's a complex page. Can you get it in plain text for me?" That's a huge improvement. There's I think before AI, how would you do that? You'd have to open up another document. You have to copy and paste, make sure you don't do formatted paste because otherwise it's gonna take your source document formatting over. It's like AI just cuts down the manual labor of any time-intensive project, especially when it comes to accessibility.
We just introduced this new feature into Foxit. All right, so in the PDF
Okay.
editor, we now have an AI bookmarking feature. And it just kind of snuck in there, right? So we've always had the automated bookmark, but in order for an automated bookmark to work, you actually have to format your original. So the Word file, you would actually have to give it header 1, header 2, header 3s, so it understood how to
Yes.
provide those bookmarks for you. So it would automatically do it, quote unquote, but it had to pull it from a formatted source. It
Yes.
doesn't have to do that anymore. I could give it just
Interesting.
blocks of paragraphs, everything in just the same normal body text over and over and over again, and the AI reads it, understands the context, makes the bookmarks based on what it's saying. That is the
I
most
love that.
incredible thing I've ever seen, and I don't know why we don't talk about that feature a whole lot more, but that
Yeah,
got me excited for it. If it can do that,
right,
what does
today.
that mean for the
Mhm.
future? What does that mean for tagging? Because that's got to be the biggest pain in the butt nightmare is all the tagging
It's
that you have to
annoying.
do for an
Yeah.
accessibility. And if AI can just read the document and know where to put your tags, boy, that changes a lot, doesn't it?
100%. 100%. And just so you know, bookmarks are a very common method that people with assistive technology use to navigate the document. Now, when you pull up a document, no matter the platform, uh, let's say I'm using JAWS, there's a list of shortcuts I can do. And it says, like, I say, hey, computer, show me all of the headings in this document. That's one method you can navigate. Or there's hotkeys that you can jump from heading to heading or table to table. Um, People who use assistive technology like screen readers don't typically read the same way non visually impaired people do. And so as a non-visually impaired person, I tend to read very traditional, top to bottom, left to right. However, if I was using assistive technology, I might just jump around. Like, I want to know the headings, the main takeaways, whatever. And so, to your point, Charles, bookmarks are a fantastic method for assistive technology users to be able to quickly consume and navigate content. Oftentimes, when we get a 50-page document, I mean, are we going to read all 50 pages? Maybe if it's like, I don't know, a divorce settlement, perhaps, but like most of the time, if it's like a 50-page set of flyers, there's probably like a couple of tidbits that are really important. And I would use that bookmark feature to navigate there. So the fact that Foxit has that built in and integrated, and I trust your word that it's good, that's fantastic. And I would encourage Foxit to continue be an innovator. Let's put the other companies to dust and get some accessibility built in. Why not? Why not have Foxit do it? Like, and I'll encourage your team right now. Anyone's watching this video, let's get AI working better for the people who need it, primarily those that rely on the accessibility of these documents. And I love bookmarks is a great first step. I'm not being a hater. Let's keep it going. Keep going.
Yeah.
Developers, go.
I love that. I love that. Great first step, but it's still a first step. We can go
Totally.
farther. Absolutely.
Totally.
Shawn Jordison, you are a digital accessibility expert, and I have links to all of your different sites down below. People should definitely check you out, especially they should be checking out the Accessibility Guy, your YouTube channel. I'm a big fan. I absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Uh, And there's links to all of your other stuff down there as well. So everybody watching and listening, I recommend going to the description and checking those out.
Thank you for having me. This is an awesome opportunity to spread the word about accessibility. And as somebody that uses Foxit as well, I definitely recommend it, especially if you're tired of the same old interface of some of the other competitors out there. Give Foxit a try. It has the same capabilities, and you totally can make your documents accessible using Foxit. And yeah, thank you for having me, Charles. And if you ever want to have me again, you know where to find me. And thank you, everyone, for your support out there who watches me already. And yeah, that's it. Mic drop. Thank you,
Thanks so
Charles.
much. Absolutely. And everybody else, have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.